May 25th, 2002. Holotropic Breathwork of May 25th, 2002. Some of my writings, you guys must think I'm on drugs or something. I don't drink other than a glass of wine occasionally, and I don't take drugs. But I do try to get into a hypnotic state sometimes, and this was something that I was doing back then. It was holotropic breathwork. It was really cool. Jane Hollister has found a piece of paradise on Earth in Spirit Springs, Homosassa, Florida. It is a 30-acre tract owned by Jane Shaw that is surrounded now by a national park. This is my first experience with holotropic breathwork, and although I have read a book about it, I was not prepared for the insight that would come. The setting is very important to this sort of work, and Jamie and I are fortunate to be here at a time when astrologers are saying that the planets are particularly well positioned for this sort of transformational work. Tonight is a full moon, and tomorrow is a solar eclipse. If ever anyone needed a sign, they would surely find one in all of this. The cabins were the perfect transition into what is important in life. They were duplexes, approximately 20 feet deep and 40 feet wide, with 2 sets of bunk beds on each side and a closet that separates the 2 halves. The area from the top of the 8-foot closet wall to the high-pitched ceiling was open, so you felt connected to the people on the other side as well. Each cabin sleeps 8, and they shared a screen porch in front. The walls are mostly windows, and even the doors are glass on the top half. There is a ceiling fan on both sides and electrical outlets, but no phones, water, or bathrooms. No TV, nor radio. All focus here was on the self and the beauty surrounding self. The cabins and the bathhouse with toilets were constructed of rough-cut cedar and are set on poles, with a catwalk connecting them at odd angles throughout the swamp. The feeling here is of making as little impact on nature as possible, and yet being able to fully enjoy her sights, sounds, and the creatures that call her home. The roofs are made of tin but are camouflaged so that they disappear in the canopy. Even during the hottest time of day, it is cool here with just a breeze from the fan and the clean air through the windows. This is the highest quality air in the world, and it feels wonderful to fill my lungs with this holistic breath. I knew my dreams this first night would be important because I have been led to this ancient Indian playground. There are 2 burial mounds here, and the spring here is where the braves would dive through a very narrow passageway as part of their rite of passage. The underground cavern is not very long, but is dark, narrow, and underwater. How well it typifies life, and I can see how the Indians would have acknowledged the facing of fears we all have, of being stuck, of not being able to breathe, when they would accept this physical challenge. At the spring, which is 35 feet deep, is reported the spirit of Aurora. She speaks to the shamans. Jamie and I stood on the docks last night, looking at our entertainment options. We could canoe or kayak, and I have always had a fear of kayaking. In my dream, I stood there making the same choice of how to traverse the river. I feared that the kayak would turn over. It was old and had leaks in it, and it looked even smaller as I stood there making my decision. The canoe, by comparison, looked big, comfortable, and sound, and I could take someone with me, but I was drawn to the experience of the kayak. I decided I would take it just a few yards down current and turn around to see how hard it would be to come back up to the dock. The water was shallow, and I could always bail out if I saw that I couldn't paddle upstream to get back to where I started. I strapped myself in, and almost holding my breath, launched free of the mooring. The river was moving faster than I thought, but I calmed as a huge hand descended over me. The hand was much like the boughs of the sweat lodge I had visited last night, and it was covered with bougainvillea. As the hand covered me, I felt safe, protected, and capable of accomplishing anything. The hand moved over the water in a beautiful, peaceful dance, and I was swept along in an elation of circling, gliding movement. I could hear the Native American song fill the air with the words, "When you find a golden feather, it means you'll never lose your way back home." Makes me want to break into song. I know that song. I was not limited to the feel of gliding on the water, but lifted from the water and dipped beneath its surface, all illustrating the interconnectivity of all things. I was able to take in all the beauty that surrounded me and to feel the joy at the marvelous and miraculous journey we call life. I am thankful to the spirits of Spirit Springs for sharing their wisdom and bravery with me. I will leave this place a braver soul and take with me the wisdom of the ages. The workshop was rich with rituals. We sat in a circle on the floor, and each of us introduced ourselves, but we were not allowed to do so in a typical surface-only manner. We were to state our names and what our intent was for being here. I said that my intent was to be able to feel what I want. Jamie said she was there to do something nice for and with me, and that she had no other intent. We then drew from a deck of animal medicine cards. I drew the raccoon, and Jamie drew the swan. The raccoon is always for the underdog, but it can see the difference between someone who truly deserves help and those who would take advantage of his true nature. The bandit is portrayed as stealing a little time for his own needs. I resonated with that. Jamie drew the swan, and the wisdom of the swan is to welcome transformation. When we drew rocks from a bowl, and were told that we would have to carry these rocks all weekend, and then leave them on the altar for the next workshop's participants to learn from. We were told to choose a rock that would illustrate the work we hoped to accomplish. I closed my eyes and felt over the bowl for heat, and reaching down picked up a rock that perfectly fit the shape of my closed hand. Jamie did the same thing, with the same result. She chose it by feel, not by its appearance. For the breathwork session, everyone chose a partner, and one would be a sitter while the other one breathed. After a quick relaxation technique and instructions on breathing deep into the stomach and then completely exhaling in a cyclic manner with no pauses between breaths, the music was cranked up. For 2.5 hours, Jamie laid there, breathing, just like she was told, and not moving a muscle. 3 times I thought I saw her lip quiver, but afterwards she said she had not experienced anything other than a fleeting image. The image looked like the flicker of an old projector screen, and was a woman, transformed into a swan. She was disappointed, and seemed to fear that I would think she hadn't tried hard enough. I told her that some people don't have wild visions, but that she should take note of how her life might start changing in the next few weeks. She acted like I was just placating her. Lunch was served on the terraces that cascade from the main house to the edge of the spring. Each table sat 4, which is perfect for group sharing, and every meal was gourmet quality and served with fresh flowers. Many people said the food was better than any they had ever experienced on cruise ships. After a wonderful meal and great conversation, it was my turn to breathe. Jamie was my sitter, and, as in many lives past, I knew her as my mother figure, and I knew I was safe. It freed me to experience this phenomenon fully, and I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. From time to time, I was somewhat concerned that Jamie might be freaked out by my crying and dancing and flying, but I rationalized that seeing her mother set free might free her of some of her inhibition. She is always in control of herself and the outward display of her emotions, and I know from experience what a heavy burden that is to bear. I was already in somewhat of an altered state from this morning's session, and feeling all of the emotions of all of the 16 participants. I had cried as much as most of them that were breathing. I had danced around the campfires in Africa and sang to the distant mountains in the desert of Australia while watching Jamie's slow, rhythmic breathing. While sitting for her, I did all of those things with my eyes open and silently. In my own session, I went under quickly and fully. In hypnosis, I often feel that some of my personalities are standing in the doorway, refusing to come along, but all of us got on this pony and rode it like the wind. By the 3rd song, the drums had carried me away. I felt the tinkling in my arms and legs. The muscles in my left leg spasmed wildly, but without pain. My breaths tingled the same way, and I felt surrounded by the kindred spirits from this place long ago. I breathed them into my being. I was comforted and welcomed home by those I knew before. I was dark myself and male, and I grew stronger, feeling all of the tribal love. I became larger and larger. I became much bigger than my friends, but I was not more important. My growth was merely a product of the love they were investing in me. The room is 2 stories high in its center, and I rose up to fill it. At first, the room confined me, but then it became transparent, and I rose through it. I looked like the same Indian who had brought the rocks into the sweat lodge in my former vision. I had a helmet of fur, horns, and feathers, and a mask of owl feathers over my eyes. I was so strong and so powerful back amongst my kin. I saw Herb Hamilton there as another brave, and I felt so close to him, like one would to a brother or a best friend. He was foremost in welcoming me back, and it felt good to know he hadn't changed. There was much dancing and celebration as all of the tribes sang around the campfire and shared the abundance of our wonderful life in this sacred place. I cried for joy at being reunited, and even as my breaths came faster, I breathed in more of the spirit of the group. Throughout the breath work, I transformed many times. My power animal is the shapeshifter, and I had no problem shifting from my current body to the Native American bodies here in Florida, and the Anasazi in the Southwest, and then becoming the coyote, the bobcat, the puma, the owl, the hawk, the laughing otter, the lizard, the kangaroo, the dingo, the alligator, the prairie dog, and the panther, and most interestingly, the snake. In the snake's form, I crawled on my back, and I could feel every scale on my body as it propelled me across the ground. I enjoyed that sensation so much that I tried it on the water and was even more amazed at how I was able to glide on the surface of the water. I then took to the trees and climbed higher and higher, circling the branches with my slithering, scaly body. I loved the sensation of being the snake, of being in transformation. In the tree, I became the bobcat, and I clawed at the branch. I felt unshakable, unmovable, and able to face any danger without backing down, even from the limbs of the tree. I thought about what Jane had said to us in the relaxation therapy before the music began. She said that we could relax our backs and not think about any support issues we may have placed on it. Of course, that made me think about it. I support everyone else and help them achieve their dreams, but no man in my relationships has ever supported me. I am carrying the whole load. I feel too weak to carry the burden on my back. And my back gives out in a last-ditch effort to let me know that I am making myself codependent on men who take and take, but never give the support that I need. As the bobcat, I felt supported in this tree, and my back didn't hurt. I thought of the lessons Andrea said she is learning from her hunting dogs. They dig holes in the soft, cool earth and feel grounded and safe. As the bobcat, I leapt down to the earth, Mother Earth, and kneaded the ground beneath my paws. As I dug into the soil, I felt connected with the earth and all that are in it and on it and the one who created it. I became the puma and continued with the pawing of the ground. I didn't need to find support in a mate. I had the support of all infinity within my own grasp. Realizing this, I became the otter who understands the whole cosmic joke. We are all running around down here trying to figure out why we're so unhappy when we are the ones who have set ourselves up to learn the very lessons and the pain that we try to escape. How silly we are to lose sight of our divinity and the plan that we set in motion. We would be such a sad race if not for the humor of it all. Knowing this set me free, and I soared like an eagle. My wingspan shadowed over all the places I flew, and I alternated from flying face into the sun like the phoenix to gliding down at breathtaking speeds. I flew past snow-capped mountains and wondered if there was any significance to the coldness there, but decided not to dwell on it. Snow is cold. I hate to be cold. End of story, for now anyway. I became the cats on Easy Street, and I cried for their captivity. As I became each of them, I transformed into a bird that took them upward through the cage roof and set them free. As they flew free, I cried. Jamie said I wailed for joy that they were finally free to be themselves. I cried for all the wrongs that they have suffered at the hands of man. I cried for all of the wrongs I have suffered at the hands of men. I cried with great gladness at our newfound freedom. After each breathwork session, the breather was to draw a mandala that represented the theme of the journey. Jamie drew the swan woman, and the background looked like an explosion of light, radiating out like lightning in every direction. Little did I know what was starting to happen inside her. Afterwards, we sat around in a circle, and passing the talking stick, the microphone, we each shared our mandalas. I don't know how you pronounce that. We each shared our mandalas and our experience. I could feel Jamie wanting to bolt for the door. It had been murder on her to say so briefly before that she was here because she was coerced, but now to have to share how she felt would be too much. Surprisingly, she shakingly admitted that she didn't have a vivid experience like everyone else did, and that the swan woman was the only image or thought she had. Jane tried to get Jamie to say what the image meant to her, and crying, Jamie handed me the mic and said she couldn't do it. I explained that in Jane's relaxation session before my breath work, she said that we should relax the back and not harbor any support issues. During my vision, it became clear that my back hurts because I believe that I support others and their dreams, but that the mates in my life do not support me. My mandala was me, with arms stretched upward to the heaven in thanks. I was sitting on the surface of the water, naked, so I cloaked my body with my hair and then used a screen of flowers that I had seen in the last song of my vision in the foreground. On the left was the snake I had become, and on the right the otter. I filled the sky with golden birds, half symbolizing the thought of the golden feather, meaning I would never lose my way back home, and half representing how surrounded I felt by kindred spirits of those in the room and those in the ground. At the bottom of the circle, I drew the puma feet to illustrate that I am grounded in the earth and in my own abilities. Lifting the circle up were the wings on which I took flight and became free of old patterns and fears. At the top of the circle was the eye of the owl that cannot be deceived by neither me nor anyone else. Over the top of the circle was the Sweat Lodge bow, covered in bougainvillea that I had seen as a guiding hand in the dream I had the first night there. Jamie and I went canoeing down Crab Creek, and in typical conversationist fashion, Jamie dredged up every piece of discarded fishing tackle that might injure some animal and carried it back to camp. I'll get this right in a minute. Jamie and I went canoeing down Crab Creek in typical conservationist fashion. Jamie dredged up every piece of discarded fishing tackle that might injure some animal and carried it back to camp. It was approaching dusk, and we saw a barred owl in the tree above us. Lisa, one of the most animated and yet suffering people in the group, ran for her camera, and as she was photographing the owl, she said that it was good luck to find an owl feather. As if on cue, the owl flew to another close branch, dropping a soft gray feather. Before I left, Jamie had told Lisa that she knew the value of the fallen feather, and so it should be Lisa's token. I went inside, and much to my amazement, Jamie stayed with Lisa. I watched with wonder as they interacted with each other. Lisa took Jamie by the sleeve, as if knowing that to touch her arm would send her running, and made Jamie take the feather for herself. The transformation had begun with one feather. The next day, we rejoined the circle to share what the animal card had taught us, what the rock had taught us, and how we intended to put that information to use. I shared the story of my amnesia and how I have relied on my daybook to remember everything, including people's names. I said that I had learned that although the raccoon was truly a champion of the underdog, that it knows the difference between one who needs help and one who is using the raccoon for their own purposes. What I learned from the rock was that if I trust my intuition, the decision I make would fit the need. What I learned from the group was that when I felt people, in the way that they had trusted the group with all of their inner fears, I remembered all 20 of their names. What I intend to do is trust my higher self and trust my ability to remember. Of course, it took a lot of verbal wrestling with myself to say that because I am always more concise in writing than in speaking. That sort of deep feeling for me always results in lots of tears, and I felt bad about handing the microphone to Jamie next, as my tears always make her cry. She cried as she spoke, and said that the swan had taught her that she could transform. The rock had not meant anything to her originally, but now the rock had become the burden of her self-consciousness, and she wasn't going to carry it around with her any more. All of us had been asked to ritually return our rocks to the center of the circle, but Jamie did with gusto, saying, "You can have this rock back." I thought she would quickly pass the talking stick, but she went on to say that the experience had been important to her and that she had learned so much from everyone there who was baring their souls. She said that she had always worried too much about her duties on Easy Street, and that this was the first time she had taken time to get back in touch with her own heart. Then she asked if anyone had any questions they would like to ask her, because it felt good to have their attention, and after laughing, they all concluded by sharing. Then she asked if anyone had any questions they would like to ask her, because it felt good to have their attention, and after laughing, they all concluded her sharing with applause. Even though they were laughing, many of them were crying, because they were watching the beautiful transformation happen right in front of them. She reminded me of Jumanji, the black leopard she had raised during his big performance in Chicago, where he didn't want to leave the stage. It was very late by the time we finished that night, so we opted not to drum to the full moon. Jamie and I had played with the drums briefly during one of our breaks, and I think that would have been great fun, but we were all exhausted after such a miraculous day. We slept to the sound of owls, coyotes, and armadillos. The next morning, I thought we were done, but there was one last exercise, and the most uncomfortable of all. Jane suggested that we select a different partner and repeatedly ask that partner, "What is your soul seizing you to do?" Diane asked me to be her partner, and we went out to the water to ask each other the question. I had already said that my intent was to trust myself and didn't have any idea what I would say if she asked to say more. I thought Diane was supposed to ask me 3 times, and I said 2 more similarly veined things, but she asked me again. Now I really didn't know what to say. I wasn't prepared, but my soul was. I answered, "My soul is seizing me to trust that I can remember what happened before the amnesia, because I will be able to handle it." I wept openly in Diane's arms at this revelation. I go around thinking that I know the bad things, the major things that happened in my childhood and young life, but as Diane's life reminded me, I only know what I've been able to handle thus far. Whatever is still hidden to me has to be worse, or else I would have recalled and dealt with it already. I have already faced horror, and what is left to face can only be worse. The agony in dealing with it is the underlying belief that I create my own reality. So what kind of person must I be to cause myself such emotional pain? I learned a lot about Diane, and it was as if we lived nearly the same life. We had been within a couple of miles of each other most of our lives, yet never met because I was in private schools. I felt at any time I could have just reached out and learned that I wasn't the only person in the world facing the demons I feared, because her story was so near identical to mine. My life was easier because I had great parents. We rejoined the circle, and I didn't have time to ask Jamie about her revelation, other than to hear that it had made her cry. My turn to talk came first, and I shared what I had discovered about my soul's real agenda, and cried to the point that I didn't think anyone could understand me, and then I handed the microphone to Jamie. She jumped to her feet and said, "I can't believe she's done this to me again." She cries and hands me the mic. Everyone burst out laughing. Jamie thanked them for humoring her and said she appreciated the way they laughed at her, even though she wasn't really that funny. She said what her soul seized her to do was to be brave and reach inside to face her fears and inhibitions and to overcome them. I was so astounded at the way she spoke with authority and power about her feelings and her transformation into the swan that I cannot remember the exact words, but everyone applauded her even much more than before. Instead of stopping there, she thanked them all again for the fact that they had applauded her and given her the encouragement to do something so profoundly frightening. She just kept on talking about finding her own sense of grace and ended up with even more applause. My little duckling has become the swan. Later, Jamie shared with me that she had stood when it was her turn because it gave her a sense of power and that she needed to be able to say what she was going to say. She said that when Yvonne had asked her over and over what her soul's intent was, that she had looked her straight in the eye and told her. She was so proud of herself for being strong enough to do so. Jamie has never been able to establish eye contact with people, and here she was talking, too. On the way home, Jamie said the volunteers were in for a huge surprise because she wasn't pussyfooting around anymore. The last ritual was to take home a stone from the experience to remind us of what we had learned. My stone was selected by Jane from a velvet bag and just happened to be a soft pink. Jamie's was her favorite shade of green. Nothing happens by accident. We all joined in a circle and kissed each other and sang together. Many people came up to me during the workshop saying what an inspiration Jamie and I were because of the depth of my feeling and because of Jamie's youth and ability to immediately utilize what she had learned to make a change that we could all see and feel. One girl in the group was in her mid-20s and had hidden under the blankets through her entire breathwork and had refused to speak at all in the circles, hiding almost literally behind her boyfriend. I watched the way that she watched Jamie, and in the last pairing, she had come to me asking to be my partner, but Diane had already asked me. In the last 2 circles, she had started sharing her feelings, and in the very end, she asked to lead us in song together. The words that I will always remember you, I will always cherish you, and I will never forget you. I will never forget this fork in the road and the paths that we both chose. Thank you, Jane Hollister, for making this possible. Thank you, Jamie, for everything you have done in this lifetime and so many eons and lifetimes before. Love you.